by ICJ, right? ICJ, they've raised this specifically, then I'm sure you are aware, you've seen what they've written.
Yes.
And they have been keen, to hear your view on that, and also this Athletes Society of Kenya, so that you can be able to satisfy. And one of the things that JSC did also was to put everybody's, apart from sample writings, also their biodata, everything, so that to be transparent. And now, and they say that they would want to hear to have assurance regarding this issue of perception, because they believe that. Like some of them, quoted the fact that even your church was commending you for bringing the president, the deputy president, for a fundraiser in 2018. So they believe that you are quite close, to the system. So to the president specifically and the deputy president. So I would still want to hear, and that's my last issue on that issue of perception, how you'd be able to deal with it vis-a-vis the issue of judicial independence, so that, if JSC was to appoint, was to recommend you as the next Chief Justice, that Kenyans will not say that JSC had already decided anyway. It was just, in social media, for us who are in social media, you'll find many of them saying that everything else you are doing is just, window dressing. The decision has already been made. In fact, there's even a joke that if you want to see if you want to know who the next Chief Justice, scratch the card. Then they put your picture and they put, it's like it's predetermined, regardless of the merit and all that. So, as a last point, from where I sit, how do you deal with that perception, considering the fact that you are the chief agent of the presidential elections, which is not wrong. We are appointed in different capacities as lawyers, so one cannot fault for that. But we can't run away from the issue of the perception, and as JSC, we can't again run away from it because we are accountable to the public.
Correct.
Whatever decision we make, we must be able to stand and justify, that position. So I don't know what your take regarding that.
Yes, I think, Commissioner, it's important I say this as clearly as I can. 2013, a great mark of honor, a great mark of trust to be entrusted with the petition. Together, of course, as you remember, I was a team leader. I had quite a number of advocates that I was working with. Let me say this, it was a one-off. In other words, after we finalized our work, I never continued working for HE, the president, in any other activity, personal or official, at all. And that ought to be put in the public domain as loudly and as clearly as possible. I was never a part or a member of Jubilee Party. Not that I have anything against the party, but because I prefer to be really a lawyer for everybody across the board. 2017, the same thing. It was a one-off. Regrettably, or as fate would have it, let me use the correct phraseology, as fate would have it, despite my walking into that court thinking this time, I'm very comfortable, the voter margin difference is 1.7 million, it was nullified. So I was engaged once again. One-off. And even after 2017, I retreated back to my private practice where I have continued working. I would wish and to emphasize to JSC and the Kenyan people that I'm here as a candidate of the people of Kenya. I am their candidate, and if given the honor to serve them, I will be appearing, so to speak, for the people of Kenya, not segments of those people. I'll be appearing for the people of Kenya and I'll be implementing the Constitution. Commissioner, allow me to say this. It is correct. I do a lot of work for the Catholic Church. I'm a practicing Catholic. it is correct that indeed we are putting up a very big structure in honor of the founder of Consolata Missionaries. Professor Consolata Missionaries was founded by Blessed Aramano. Blessed Aramano, or his order, came to Kenya in 1902. Throughout the world, there is no country, and Consolata Missionaries are in very many parts of the world, where there is a building in honor of Blessed Aramano. But in Consolata Shrine, I, together with like-minded people, decided to have an office block in honor of Aramano. It's a big thing, and we regard we are the first in the world. The construction cost is quite substantial. We raised it, but we are almost going on our knees. We decided to have a major harambe for all the people of Kenya, not for segments of the people in Kenya. So the first person I actually approached is our MP, Mheshimiwa Wanyonyi. And Mheshimiwa Wanyonyi actually came to church to say he will be part of us. It is also true, HE, being a Catholic, we invited him. It is also true that the deputy president, as the deputy to the president, we invited him. And we didn't just invite political leadership. We invited each and every person, mostly of the Catholic faith, but we also invited my friends who are of the Muslim faith and very many other people. So in that congregation, political leaders were in the minority. The majority were people from everywhere, including one of the outreach is Deep Sea. Kenyans will call it a slum. I don't know why we use such terms. It's one of the areas we have in Westlands. Each one of them had turned out in large numbers, and we raised a lot of money. I'm saying this to emphasize one simple point. It is a mark of honor for a president to give a citizen, particularly a citizen who is not part of the government, some work to do. But it cannot be used against that citizen for any advancement in the career. And I say this with tremendous respect. If the president approached you as a medical doctor and you did a procedure for him, other patients will still see you as Dr. Macharia, not as the president's doctor, because you are not.
Yeah. Well, for me, I wouldn't mind to be his lawyer. I don't want to lie. If he approached me as his lawyer, not now as JSC member, but before, I would happily do the work. Now, let me come now to your individual qualities. We just forget about these other issues. Singapore actually is a case that I admire, and I've also studied the Singapore experience a lot as relates to judiciary. I keep quoting it to my colleagues at the commission to a point almost where I bore them about it. And I agree, it's a classic example where they had a huge backlog and then it was sorted out. But I want to relate it now with just to again test a little bit, because what I noted is that the Chief Justice who changed was the Investment Corporation of Singapore. He was really renowned for that. And the judges themselves, 4 senior judges in Singapore judiciary, said that our problems are too big, we need an outsider. They agreed, we need an outsider. Just, like yourself. The only difference, and that I'm saying this because it's something that I put through to one of the candidates here. The only difference that they agreed that he needs a bit of judicial experience, and so the route they used was to put him first as a Supreme Court judge for a year actually, then became the Chief Justice. So which brings me now to the question, how you would relate that with you. If somebody said that, yes, because you are actually a jurisprudent, you are a walking, everybody agrees, nobody will argue with the fact that if you're talking about jurisprudence, it is in your head, you are walking jurisprudence. But perhaps the best route would be Supreme Court first, then the Chief Justice to get the judicial experience because of the dynamics of the institution. I don't know what would be your response to that.
Commissioner, it could be said that of Singapore. It's not a rule of universal application. Let's look at my first employer, if we could, because it's a gentleman who made me who I am. From the time he left law school, and I think he was trained in America, then came here, did his bar exams, he was a prosecutor. He was a prosecutor for numerous years. When Charles Jonjo became the Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, my boss was appointed the Attorney General. He didn't go through any formative training. And because of the leadership skills I referred to, he ended up being a fantastic Attorney General. So I don't think you require some incubation before you are given a role. And the same would hold true for Chief Justice Mutunga. And many other Chief Justices we've had in Kenya didn't have to go through some training period. I would say, without any fear, without any equivocation, that I have the tools, the ability, and most important, the zeal to transform the judiciary. I don't need to go through any other position, and that is why I didn't apply for the position of Judge of the Supreme Court.
Okay,
if given an opportunity, just like my two predecessors, within 4 years, I should be able to come before you and come with my scorecard.
Now, again, Al Warren, who again I also respect, that's something we share. And I've also studied a little bit about his background, and which probably could also have influenced his success. But what I also noted is that, as you rightly said, between 1943, I think, up to 1953, that's when you were the governor of California. And you know, California is slightly smaller than Kenya in terms of geographical spread, because I think they're about 423,000 square kilometers. Kenya is about 580,000 square kilometers. So he was actually governing a country, so to speak, equivalent of Kenya. So would somebody probably say that by virtue of being a governor, where he's leading, you know, he's in charge of a state, even in terms of the judicial processes in the state, the administrative processes, you know, legislative processes. So he's garnering experience that goes outside, beyond being an advocate or a lawyer, so to speak, that could probably have also influenced his success, that somebody maybe will criticize and say that perhaps he was better placed because of that background, that experience that goes beyond just being a lawyer, and that prepared him for being a Chief Justice. I don't know again how to be your answer, then I can leave that, you know, point.
Correct, Commissioner. Warren is a combination of many factors. He was a fantastic lawyer, went to become a governor, and then ended up as a Chief Justice. The candidate you're interviewing is not very different. I have just explained to you one of the things I did for University of Nairobi. And I didn't need to go to court to be able to transform that college to what it is today. And I've done many of such activities. Warren was in office as a governor, and what all these experiences, what these experiences give us, is give us the experience to be outside what you do. If you just say, for example, using, and it's a poor example, you are sitting somewhere adjudicating day in, adjudicating day out, as you do in your chambers as an arbitrator, as compared to somebody with a better world view of beyond arbitration, who has the skills of the arbitrator, but has more than the arbitrator. That is what this candidate who is before you has. I am qualified as a lawyer, I'm qualified as a philosopher, I'm qualified as a leader. I am no different from Warren. I hope I am within near reach of my former teacher, Chief Justice Mutunga.
Okay. Then the other issue that I probably would want to hear from you. And I'm again picking it from the candidates who are here. Kenyans have been seeing the candidates. I'm sure even now they are watching you, you know, and also they'll pick, you know, a few points and all that. And now, it seems like some of them are also now asking, particularly now again the constituents that I represent, that you see, one of the most difficult periods for this country was the late 80s and early 90s, before the repealing of Section 2A of the Constitution, so the so-called second liberation. And you know, many of us, for me, that's the time I was just coming from a university. It was a time when advocates, you know, were out there, you know, playing. In fact, I would say that that time it's like the lawyers were the opposition. They were the ones who were advancing the human rights, bringing political change, you know, and all that. So some would want to know that during that time, what role you played in whatever way. It doesn't have to be even at the front, because people play different roles with the same objective and they realize the same results. It's the different parts that lead to the sum total that leads now to the change. That any role that you'd have played in terms of advancing the cause of the second liberation and bringing us to where we are today. Because as you can imagine, one of the qualities you're looking for in a Chief Justice is courage. You know, I'm asking that in the context of courage. Somebody who would be able to be out there and that to advance the change, you are doing something in your own small way to ensure that change is there, not just sitting, you know, in the comfort zone. I don't know whether you'd have something to say, you know, around that.
Yes, that's the virtue of fortitude, courage. Commissioner, I will go on record as saying this. You may recall the looting of public land that was characterized during that period. The MP of Embakasi, Mr. Honorable Thenge, and one of the councillors then, that was councillors, minor commander, approached me because at that time, if you may remember, I was at Post Bank House. Surveyors had come to City Market, and the case you'll be able maybe to trace it. They wanted to take away City Market. So the case of City Market Stall Owners Association, I did it. I had to overcome the permanent duty judge, Justice Dugdale, who would not give any orders because of this thing he held against everybody, called locus standi. Simultaneously, and I hate to say this, City Mortuary was about to be taken away. I did that case. And those are the cases that we were doing out of passion, because we knew sooner or later these things must come to an end. I did many other cases that I may not need to go into. I was part and parcel of it. Many of those people, including our brothers in Nakuru, I was their lawyer. I did so many matters for them, and I'm proud. Maybe I never went to the public barazas or to address the media, like of course some of our colleagues did, but I did my fair share of it. So in my anonymity, because I didn't want any accolades, I did what I could have done, and I am proud to say, when I pass through Banda Street and I see those stores and those Kenyans still having their stores there, pass through City Mortuary and know the service is giving our people, I feel very proud about it.
Okay. Now let me come to the challenges. This is now my last line of questioning of judiciary. The challenges that we face, and you raised up a pertinent issue regarding delays, where you find that it is still now that we are grappling with the issue of automation, when you should have done it actually basically in the 90s, so to speak. We are one of the few jurisdictions, in spite of the advancement of technology in the country, where judiciary is still grappling with the issue even up to now. And like I was watching this case of George Floyd, he was killed in May, I think, May last year, and now the jury is already now on deliberations. In less than a year, a determination will have been made, something that you're not able to achieve here. You've indicated about what will be able, to do regarding that. Now, a backlog, that issue of backlog and a slow pace, which has an impact also on the economy and the livelihoods and all that. If you could just summarize just 3 steps that you take immediately to make sure so that things can move. We can now move from talking now to the doing, because we must accept that everybody, before there has been a lot of talk on it to a point where it has become a tired subject. 3 practical steps that you take to ensure that you're able to take now the judiciary to the next level in terms of ICT, in terms of productivity. You've talked about the quality, also even because you talk so much about the quantity and you forget about the quality. Like now the backlog, we all know as lawyers that there are many judges who very quickly have these notices to show cause to dismiss, that they can show they've concluded, but they actually didn't conclude. So 3 practical steps that will be able to deal with the numerous challenges we are facing that are impacting on practice.
Commissioner, dismissal of cases for want of prosecution is not really an access to justice. It is simply a running away from the reality. So I want to deal with the lived reality of the litigant. The lived reality of the litigant is that he wants his case concluded. So let us take, for example, a division like civil division with, say, 3,000 odd cases. I would want to see, and I would deal with statistics, not hypothesis, how many cases have delayed over 3 years. There are so many. How many judges do we have? That is why I keep on saying all hands on deck. And maybe identify 3 judges, get them out of the cost list, and we now dedicate ourselves to clearing the backlog. All this is a statistical approach. That is why the department dealing with statistics in judiciary, I would even want them to report to me directly. Deal with it from a statistical angle, because that is a science. And see maybe 3 judges, allocate them nothing else, and these cases to be had on a day-to-day basis. Current cases, because we must do both at the same time. You mentioned the case going on in Minneapolis. It's just an example of finesse. But that finesse comes because all the actors are working together. Not just the judiciary, it is all the actors working together. You saw, for example, how meticulous the prosecution was. It was witness to witness to witness, even when they were dealing with medical doctors and everybody. That is not an impossible thing for us to do. So that once we start a case, the magistrate or the judge can allocate that case a day-to-day hearing and complete it. And if we were to do those, plus of course, enhancing our IT capability, I assure you, Commissioner, within a short while, we will do what Singapore did. Because we are not inventing a new wheel. We don't even need to go to Singapore for benchmarking. We can see their statistics and their approaches, and day after my swearing in, we start rolling off.
Now my last question is regarding accountability. Because human beings, they want responsibilities, but they don't want to be held to account. In fact, it's something I experienced when I was oversighting police, where the police would say that, you know, you are interfering too much with our work. They do not want to be held to account. They just want the responsibility, no accountability. Now, again, judicial office sometimes will hear some saying that they would not want, you are pushing us too hard. Give us the resources, give us the facilities, let us do the work, but you are pushing us too hard when it comes to issues of complaints. So now tell me, as our Chief Justice, what steps would you take to ensure that even as the resources, we are talking about resources, we are talking about facilitating the judicial officers, the judges, and of course even the judicial staff, that we are also able to hold them to account on behalf of the public, because public also, the complaints come from the public. They also want the institution to be held to account because it serves them. So would you also give us some kind of, very briefly tell us how you go about ensuring that you are also holding the people below you to account? In fact, starting from yourself as the Chief Justice, and then also the people who are below you, so that you are given that position, but you're also able to account to the public.
Commissioner, let me again cite a Chief Justice I'm starting to read quite a lot about, the South African Chief Justice. What he did, because in their JSC Act, equal to ours, it had certain lacunas, like what happens to delayed judgments. And he came up with what I think is a very innovative thing. He came with a practice note, or the equivalent of a practice note, to say that if a judgment is delayed more than 6 months, that is a reportable occurrence to JSC. It's reportable. Why am I going there? We are also coming from a culture where, as you know from your members, we members complain of judgments being delayed for 5 years. That cannot be within the work ethic of the modern judiciary. With the tools that I proposed, that I would propose that were made available, if we have a case management system, and I saw this in the Arusha court, as soon as the court starts, the president of the court can be able to tell the court started at this time. So even the time you start your court, however far off you are, it is a reportable event. That way, you are able now to hold all judicial officers to account, that we are not just sitting back and saying we have independence, and the equivalent of the independence we have in mind is to do nothing, because that is not independence. Independence means or comes with responsibility, and that will not only be the judicial officers, it will also apply to the Supreme Court. We must also be accountable.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Jeru. Thank you, Senior Counsel. I will now request the Attorney General to ask you questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Senior Counsel, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Attorney General.
Just to follow up from the questions that have been posed to you, you're coming to a judiciary where, in the case of the Supreme Court, you have very experienced judges there, and that cuts across the board in the other superior courts, the magistracy, the qadis, and indeed the judiciary staff. And you have conceded, Senior Counsel, that you do not and have had no judicial experience. But you come to this interview with considerable and an illustrious career as a practitioner at the bar. How are you going to bridge this seeming gap of your lack of experience as a judicial officer, where you are expected to lead from the front, to give jurisprudential and administrative leadership to the judiciary, to the courts, and to the other people that you'll be dealing with, like the NCAJ and so on?
Attorney General, I do not see that absence at being a judicial officer as a gap in my CV. I don't see it. Mm-hmm. Just like I don't see it, the fact that you are never a state counsel with us and you being the Attorney General. I see leadership as the pivotal angle. I see in the Supreme Court, for example, judges who were never judicial officers. They became judicial officers when they became appointed judges of the Supreme Court. And they had no difficulty. And for them and for you, sir, you've been exemplary in your service delivery in your respective offices. The fact that I haven't been a judicial officer, but I've had a long exposure in law, and as you say, an illustrious career in law, I see, number one, I'll be easily accepted by the judges of the Supreme Court. I will actually be able to hold conferences with them from day one. I see myself being able to have a very collegial discussion with them. I have participated in most of their landmark decisions. They have, I know, some respect for me. For me, I have tremendous respect for them. So, number one, Attorney General, I see an immediate acceptance by judicial officers. And because of the way I have treated staff of the judiciary, I see no problem between the interface of I from private practice to be the Chief Justice. In other words, Attorney General, I see it as a very big plus. If I had been here and maybe quarreled in the nature of business with a judge, with so and so, that could even be a bigger concern. But because I've never been working here, I am, so to speak, a friend of all and acceptable by all. And with that, I say, without any fear, I see an immediate acceptance at the Supreme Court.
What tools are you going to engage in that leadership role? In formulating your leadership style, what tools, what personal attributes are most important?
As I indicated, I would have prudential judgment, very, very prudential judgment. I'll learn where necessary. I'll have my cabinet, the Judiciary Advisory Council. I'll learn as quickly as I can. I'll be able to work with them, and to a large extent, I will be able to have very irregular meetings with all of them and not change for the sake of changing. Try to work with the people that I find in office because they are my first point of call. And with the people in office would be really the way that I start my first, say, 100 days as I learn. Remembering at all times, Attorney General, that the buck stops at me. In Supreme Court, my leadership style will be very different, will not be any more different. I would want to understand the case backlog. I would want to understand how cases are how benches are constituted, and then how we can start having our pre-hearing conferences immediately. Pre-hearing conferences, identify the issues, and get going. And in all those, I don't see any handicap. In all probability, I'll be the first to generate an opinion.
Thank you, Senior Counsel. You've just mentioned again the aspect of the expeditious disposal of cases. In the context of ongoing cases, not cases which have not been commenced. And my mind goes back to a case you will remember well because you were in it, of Goldenberg. You represented one of the accused persons.
Yes, I did.
And in that case, it was in the courts until virtually all the accused persons died. And even as we sit here, no judgment has ever been rendered. How will you deal with that aspect of the judiciary's current workload of cases which are stuck, part heards? You mentioned earlier when we were discussing the NCJ, and how you would bring them on board, you use the word lethargy. And you're referring to the various players within the NCJ. How are you going to deal with that problem?
Attorney General, I don't know how far I can talk about this, but I think I'll be as guided as I can. You remember in the Goldenberg case, I once told the Chief Magistrate, let her remain nameless, that I think the prosecution strategy is to outlive all of us. And I made a pledge, they will not outlive me. This is because I think the prosecution strategy was never to conclude the case. So at NCAJ, because it's all closed door, I'll be able to discuss with the other players that if you're doing a case for only a PR exercise, look for another forum other than my judiciary. You see, there are cases that are made never to be heard. Can I say this without overdoing it? If you are to have 50 accused persons on 120 charges, each of the accused with one lawyer, that is not a case that is going to be concluded within the lifetime of an individual. But you can still achieve the success by breaking it down. Those are the kind of things, very frank discussions, as a Chief Justice that I'll have. Let's not use judiciary for PR exercises. Use judiciary services when you want a case heard and concluded. And for a case to be heard and concluded, our doors are open. And it's not for us to decide for them how to do their work. It is their constitutional right. But it's equally our constitutional right to say, please do not use us as the doormat so that you say judiciary is the one to blame. As you very rightly say, Goldenberg now is every accused person has died, and they died with that tag of having been accused persons. I shed tears when the last accused person died, because in all probability, there was no criminal culpability on the person that I have in mind.
Thank you, Senior Counsel. In the context of Article 160, how independent is the judiciary in your view, Senior Counsel?
Judiciary, and here I think we need to distinguish current and past. Past, I doubt whether it would have been said to be independent as an institution.
Let's deal with the current.
Current, I would say judiciary is fairly independent. I emphasize the word fairly independent because judiciary needs to do a little bit more. Is to show that independence, not just the decisional independence, but institutional independence. And Attorney General, let me quote this, let me say this. You see, the more our affairs are made public, the more that people see the case is being decided on merit, the more that somebody says that on their phone they can be able to see the progress of the case, the more we shall actually have 100% rating is very independent. I'll say this. The best antiseptic is sunshine. Sunshine becomes the best antiseptic. Let's open our affairs to the public, and that sunshine will actually show how independent we are. We are almost at the verge. Let's do the next 1 mile, and everybody will see this is a very independent judiciary. For decisional independence, I think that is something that I cannot comment. I would need to do a bit of empirical analysis, do a bit of review before I say what rating we are at. But I'll say, even for decisional independence, by and large, practitioners, and here I think Commissioner may agree with me, by and large, practitioners feel that the judiciary of today is very, very independent.
So, in that vein, Senior Counsel, as Chief Justice, as the President of the Supreme Court, and as Chair of the Judicial Service Commission, what would you do to bring about what you call fairly independent into the sunshine you have just described? What steps would you take?
Yes, I'll open judiciary to the sunshine, and the sunshine will come.
How will you?
Number one, we have better IT capacity, better case management systems. No files are disappearing because now they are digital. In South Africa, they have the files, the storage in court and another off-site, so that at no time would anything be said to be missing. And those are the steps, amongst others, that will bring the sunshine into the judiciary. We are just on the verge of that transition.
Thank you. Now, you've been in the corridors of the courts for 40 years. And if anybody can tell us whether there is corruption in the judiciary, it would have to be you, Senior Counsel. How would you respond to that?
It can be only me, Attorney General. The talk about corruption in the judiciary is at two levels. There's corruption at registry level, which to me is very insidious because it's there and you cannot see it. You know, Attorney General is a former practitioner as well, that will pay court fees and be given a receipt, only to realize that that was a dummy receipt. That money never went to judiciary. So one way of getting rid of that is using e-filing. By e-filing, you eliminate that type of corruption completely. And that, I think, has substantially been done. But having done that, you need audit system, periodic audit systems, so that there is no enterprising Kenyans getting into that sum of money. Then you come to the judicial officers. That is an area, that is the area that I think I would want to deal with as efficiently as possible. We do this really through a process of trying to inculcate ethical values, ethical virtues, and the more we do this, the more we'll get out of any perception of corruption. But needless to say, if there is any obvious case of corruption, not just obvious, if there is any case of corruption, we take it up as JSC.
But Senior Counsel, you're well aware, even when Chief Justice Emeritus William Otunga came on board, he worked very, very hard to deal with the issue of corruption even at the individual level. There have been commissions which have worked tirelessly and rendered reports and recommendations, and you are aware of them. The Judiciary Training Institute has offered training even on the ethical values that you speak about. How are you going to overcome this almost resistance that seems to be embedded within the judiciary?
The more we use the tools that I'm proposing, where you can see that a judicial officer went to court on this date at this time, did this case, and this is his decision. You are able to look at that decision with the necessary parameters and see whether it's within the law. That is one approach. The other approach is we can never give up on trying to inculcate the correct work ethics. Because the minute we start giving up, it is to give up on our own selves. So I'll still do as much as I can to try and inculcate the correct approaches to life, because it's those approaches that will bring us collective victory and collective success. So much as I know of all the efforts which have been done, including the commission you headed, Attorney General, including the interventions you had at the Court of Appeal, I will still not give up. I will soldier on, because this is a battle that must be won. Corruption cannot reign in judiciary. Corruption is a battle that must be conquered by the deliberate effort and the purposeful effort of the Chief Justice and the other members of the judiciary who the Chief Justice will be working with. It's not a one-man show, it is a collective effort.
Thank you. You spoke about the interdependence of the three arms of government. Would you consider the judiciary to be a threat to the other two arms of government?
Threat it could be, just like the other two arms could be a threat to judiciary. You can be a threat if you do not understand your constitutional mandate. If you understand your constitutional mandate, you cannot be a threat to the other arms of government. That is why, for example, it's a well-developed principle, which I would wish to even talk about at JTI, about judicial restraint. Judicial restraint is because we all understand the other actors in the economy have their own, for example, constitutional mandate to undertake. But of course, if there is conflict in how they undertake those mandates, it becomes a justiciable issue which then falls on us. So we can never be a threat if we restrict ourselves to the four corners of our constitutional mandate.
Could you elaborate on that and tell us how, as Chief Justice, you would seek to ensure that there is no undermining by the judiciary on the other two arms of government?
It's judicial overreach. And by judicial overreach, I mean matters which are not justiciable. We are not in the business of politics at all. That is not within us. But in politics, there may come an issue that is that is legal. For example, impeachment of a governor is a political process. But in that process, if there is any infraction of a legal right, then we take it up. But for the political process, we are averse to it. So, Attorney General, my view of the matter would be this: let every judge understand what is within our mandate, and that is quite easy. We have brilliant judges, and let's not have activism in judiciary, which can therefore mean that we start having unnecessary unnecessary attacks with the other arms of government.
But how would you do that, Senior Counsel, bearing in mind the independence of the individual judge? Where do you draw the line between what you've just called activism and independence of the judge?
Very well. I'll do this as JTI. That is our home. And in that home, we are able to talk about our businesses quite clearly. In that home, we shall be able to espouse what is our parameters. In that home, we'll be able to say what is now judicial overreach. Could I give an example? In South Africa, when former President Bashir went there, a High Court judge issued, as you may recall, an order to arrest him. And he followed it up the following day with a further order that he must be arrested. And Attorney General, I'm sure you will recall, the cabinet had to meet and reprimand judiciary for what they said you are now getting into very explosive areas of foreign policy. Those are the things that maybe with retrospect, one would have seen that these are matters which are not entirely justiciable. But that is something that, of course, within JTI, you are able, with your brothers and sisters, to be able to define parameters of what is justiciable and what is not justiciable.
Thank you. Finally, going back to the 41 judges. Chief Justice Emeritus David Maraga, I think, said that he had sought to engage the appointing authority in vain. He had made phone calls which remained unanswered. And earlier on you indicated that you would seek to dialogue. What happens, Senior Counsel, what will you do or would do in the event that your attempts to make those calls was also met with tomb-like silence?
I would want to see the two situations quite different, for the simple reason that situations can never be identical. And I'm not here to pass judgment on his style and my style. I do believe that as head of judiciary, there must be a way you're able to reach out to the Speaker of National Assembly, because he is a co-equal, or Speaker of the Senate, because we are all working for the people of Kenya. My approach is this. I'll approach it from Adam Smith. It's not benevolence you're looking for. It is an understanding that judiciary does not exist for itself. Judiciary exists for the people of Kenya. Approaching it from that principle, I do not see anybody not being unable to have a dialogue, because I am not doing this for self, but I'm doing it for the people of Kenya. Understood in that context, and since all the persons that we are talking about are, number one, patriots of the highest order, leaders of the highest order, I should be able to have a structured meeting with the three arms of government at any time. And I repeat once again, it's not benevolence, as Adam Smith in this book of Wealth of Nations says, but something for the common good of the people of Kenya.
I am grateful, Senior Counsel, for having answered those questions, and would have no more. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Attorney General. I will now request Commissioner Patrick Gishohi to ask his questions.
Thank you, Professor. Counsel, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Very good. I want us to focus on something different. You have spoken very eloquently about the judiciary, the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, and all those issues. I want us to focus in one key areas as you come in, if you get this position, and I pray you get it, as the chairperson of the commission. And I want us to remain on the commission itself.
This commission.
This commission. As soon as you get to the office, the first thing that you'll be able to get is a report by the consultants that was submitted to this commission, I think in 2019. In that report is about the review of the organization in terms of its operations. We are at the stage of implementation. As the chairperson of the commission, they have raised two issues that I would wish you to reflect on. One, governance efficiency of the commission is below average. Efficiency, the governance structure of the commission is below average. 2, weak performance management system, among others. That report will be on your desk if you get this position. Will you share with this commission how you address those 2 issues that are very prominent in that report by the consultants?
Commissioner, not being privy to what led to such low grades, because these are very low grades, not being privy to what happened for you to be below 50%, I may be a little hard pressed to say what prescription I'll come up with. But I can say this, as a Chief Justice,
Chairman of the commission,
and Chairman of the commission,
yeah,
I will not only look at the report, because the report is the end product of a process. I will start off with where did we start doing things the wrong way. Because to have a grade that we are below average is an embarrassment to all of us. But there may be concerns and interventions that were not done at the right time. So I would want to see why didn't we do those interventions early enough? Why is our performance weak? I would want to see as many of those reasons as possible. And again, working with this commission, instead of us now saying how awful we have been rated, I will actually roll up my sleeves and say, look, ladies and gentlemen, we must get to over 90% at the next assessment.
Honorable Counsel, that's what I'm looking for. The instruments that you are going to put in place to take us to that level, as our leader, as a commission, as the chair of the commission, if you can be able to share with us 1 or 2 issues that you do to take us to that level of 90%.
That's what I indicated. I would want to know why we went to that low level first. That's the first port of call.
Yeah.
Because when you get a result, Commissioner, a result that is 40%, you may not be able to prescribe what is wrong without understanding what led to the 40%.
Okay.
So the first tool I'll look at is our history. When was the last assessment done? What has happened in the intervening period? And what is it that we didn't do correctly?
Okay.
Yes.
I think, Senior Counsel, what my colleague is looking for is a hypothetical indicators. You know, I mean, if you are to assess, in your opinion, what will be assessed, even if it's hypothetical, you must have an idea of what will be assessed.
I see. I'll look at the leadership.
Leadership?
Leadership would be one of the things that I'll look at. I'll look at the collectivity. By collectivity, I mean what are the other members' input or lack of input into that leadership. I'll look at the implementation. Those are some of the things that I'll be looking for.
Okay. I'm sure you have looked at the kind of structure we have the commission. And you're talking about the mechanism of making sure that the commission is accountable. Yeah, earlier on, you talked about accountability in terms of the members, in terms of the staff. I would like to hear from you, what mechanism will you put in place to ensure that the commission remains accountable in terms of the structures?
I'll put every measure in place. I will, number one, look at the regularity of the meetings, the agendas set out in the for the meetings, the way we transact our business, and more important, Commissioner, as you know, it is also the follow-up and the implementation of the decisions.
Okay.
So that if you have a weakness at any one of those levels, then you are not able to fulfill your constitutional mandate, which is set out in Article 160. It is 171. You know, you have a constitutional obligation.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's take the case of the staff. and you have to ensure that your staff remains motivated, productive, and efficient. We have human resource manual, we have policies that govern human resources. I would like to hear from you, as the chairperson of the commission, what programs you put in place to ensure that the staff are productive, efficient, and their performance measured?
Yes. One of the things I think in every large organization, not large, it's all organizations, is a bit, you've got to look at staff welfare.
The staff welfare, yes.
And there are certain very quick wins that you could have with staff welfare. Look at a medical scheme, for example.
It's in place.
Medical scheme for staff is one of the things that is very endearing, particularly when you have staff who are young, of childbearing age, and with young families. That becomes almost a must-do, because you reduce the stresses associated with taking a child to hospital and then the money required. If we can have a staff medical scheme and make sure that at all times it's valid.
Okay. Talk a little bit about reward and sanctions as far as human resources is concerned in terms of the judiciary.
Yes.
Yes.
Reward
and sanctions.
Yes. Reward is something that is very nice and has been tested in a few blue chip companies, where you can have performance indicators. If you go beyond this performance level or you achieve this, there will be a reward. And it's something that people look forward to. And a lot of blue chip companies all over the world have reward schemes, and of course they have sanctions. Because you can't just have reward. If you do not achieve to your target, there should be a sanction.
Okay. The other question that maybe you need to discuss is the issue of financial accountability. There are three words that you normally use in public service: source, spend, and account. As the chairperson of the commission, the buck will stop at you in terms of financial accountability. Would you expound a little bit on source of the funds, spending on the fund, and accounting for the funds? What will guide you?
Yes. I'll be guided by the law as always. The source is really no other than National Assembly.
National Assembly.
I will do everything possible at the earliest opportunity to engage with the budget committee, as you are aware, as a former very resourced person in it. You start off at the budget committee, you go to the justice and law committee. Equally important is the Speaker of the House.
Okay.
And then from there you go to National Treasury with the Cabinet Secretary, so that everything is done. But allow me to say this, Commissioner. It pains me to see that the Treasury Fund has never been made operational.
You're coming to that.
Oh, good.
Go to the next: spend. You have sourced the money?
You've sourced the money.
Yes.
But you see, you can source the money and it's a budget item. But it's not been given to you, which therefore means CRJ has got to make endless trips to Treasury for releases which are done piecemeal. That in itself becomes a problem, because then the spending, you may not be able to absorb it.
Okay.
And this is one of the things that I found out when I was doing the Council of Governors case, that a county is given funds in June, you can't absorb it. So absorption levels are so low, 10%, 30%. So depending on your question about judiciary fund, if our funds are given like for consolidated or equalization, then our spending becomes, we are able to absorb up to 98% or 100%. Accounting is the one.
Before we come to accounting,
Sorry.
council, honorable council, my interest is the chairperson of the commission. When it comes to spending the money, what is your law?
The buck stops with me.
Yes.
Although I will not micromanage on a day-to-day basis, we must have very clear, very clear spending parameters, what we are spending it for. If it is for construction, it's clearly earmarked. And these are not things that we simply assume they are being done.
Okay.
Yes.
I want to hear from you. What would you expect to get from your accounting officer as far as that spending is concerned?
Very well. I would want to see a budget.
The budget is there already?
Is budget. Number two, we have been allocated so much. What are we going to spend it for? Number three, the procurement processes.
Procurement.
Because if there are no procurement processes, then you are dealing in darkness.
Okay.
And you can't fly in blindness.
Let's go to accounts.
Yes. The account, we owe it to the people of Kenya to account to them. The annual report, the annual report that is generated, it is a legal requirement. We must table it to Parliament. And as a matter of fact, that is a document that shows what we have been given. We have accounted for it to the last cent.
Okay, let's go back to the judiciary fund, which is actually, it has been enacted, you have the regulations, but we are still not there. Now, as the chairperson of the commission, I'm very interested in terms of the operation of that fund, and in terms of your strategic partnership, what will you do to at least to ensure that that fund gets the money that is in operational?
As I was preparing for this interview, I took some time to understand why what is as obvious as day follows night has not taken place. And one of the things I saw is that there's an argument about the Public Finance Management Act requiring this and requiring that.
Yeah.
Being a lawyer more attuned with the Constitution, I'll engage the other stakeholders.
Specific stakeholders?
I'll engage National Treasury.
National Treasury, what level?
Sorry?
At what level as a chairperson of the commission?
CS.
CS, yes.
Speaker of the National Assembly. I don't know who other person is. Maybe the Auditor General. I also saw there is a reference to Auditor General. And whoever other is key person is a key impediment to the act being operationalized.
Okay.
And I would want us to understand
Yeah.
that judiciary fund is no less than equalization fund.
Oh.
And they are set up by the same constitution. So let us not play statute law as a way to impede judiciary to have financial autonomy.
Okay, Council, since you have talked on that issue, if you look at the Constituency Development Fund, at least they allocated 2.5% of the revenue. Now, in terms of the judiciary, we are not yet there. I would like to hear from you as a chairperson of the commission, and with all those other strategic issues that you have, how do we ensure at least we are very clear, we are predictable, and you know that at the end of the financial year, we either have 3% or 1% or 5%, so that when you are budgeting our programs, we are certain that the money is going to be there.
Yes.
How will you do that?
Yes, I would agree with you, Commissioner. It will be very good to have a degree of certainty what your allocation will be. And I've seen in one or two papers of a suggestion of 2.5% of the annual budget. How will I get there?
Yes.
Is the same way I indicated. I will engage with other players in it. You see, I think here, and I believe, Commissioner Gishohi, you can understand me. Sometimes we react to a situation which has already happened. And I've seen persons going to complain to Treasury after the budget speech has been read. I mean, as your commissioners are aware, budget making starts in August. So in a few months' time, the budget making process for next year will kick in. And there will be a minister's speech. After that, there are so many key statute procedures that immediately start. So if you wait until the budget day and say, look, I wasn't allocated, it's far too late.
Okay.
So I'm sure I'll engage with CRJ, with the other directorates, and we'll engage National Assembly, if not August, earlier than August.
Okay. Let's go to something else. Devolution. What place do you see the judiciary in terms of our devolution process? And when you're discussing that, if you are invited at the summit, he brings together the national government and the county government, the president as chairperson of that summit, and you are invited in that summit as the Chief Justice. Could you share with us two issues that you would be able to articulate on behalf of the judiciary in terms of justice delivery in our counties?
Yes. Having worked for the Council of Governors, again, I see that as a seamless exercise. I will request the county governments to be quite ready and willing to allocate land to judiciary.
Allocate land, yes.
Allocate land to judiciary for us to construct courts. They may not be the mammoth structures of high court. They may be as simple as magistrates courts. But the beauty with that is this: we have a constitutional obligation under Article 6 to take our services as close to the people as humanly possible. That is a constitutional imperative. So, Council of Governors or governors should not expect us to go to the marketplace to look for land and buy land. They have lots of land. We are doing this for the people within their counties. And I would expect a very, very easy, seamless interaction with all the county governments.
Apart from land, what else?
That is what I would immediately expect. Then, needless to say, I would expect that if we are constructing the court, they will be our partners, will educate our people, they will help us educate their people of the need to access our services, and more important, the need to be partners in our courts as users and as beneficiaries of our systems.
As a person who lives, some of us, in our rural areas, Nairobi appears very distant. And most of the services that are sought by our Kenyans are up there, 90% in our rural areas. And in terms of settlement of small cases, small disputes, we have very big challenges. If you become the Chief Justice, I'd like to hear from you in terms of the establishment of these small claims courts. I do realize that you did allude to that earlier on. But I want to be very clear. Would it be part of your first agenda in your platform?
Yes. Because small claims court, Commissioner, are a win in many ways. Currently, the backlog that I think we were discussing with your colleagues, the backlog in our system are those claims. Claims of 500,000, claims of this. These are the kind of claims that could very legitimately be transited to the small claims court. So it is actually a long overdue activity. If it could even be implemented tomorrow, all the better. And immediately you see, from a case backlog of, say, 200,000, you may reduce that by 100,000. So this backlog is something that needs a very comprehensive view. Because if you take, say, 100,000 cases from the magistrate's court, then you free them to deal with the cases which are beyond the pecuniary jurisdiction.
So, Council, you're saying that in case you get this position and within 100 days, still be allowed here, God willing, we shall be able to see this small claims court on and running?
Immediate. They should be immediate.
Okay.
They should be immediate. As quickly as humanly possible.
Okay.
And they are not difficult to do,
Okay.
as I understand it.
Before I go to my final question, I want us to look at communication strategy. You see, communication is very, very important, both internal and external. And if you don't tell your story, somebody else will tell your story. if you get the position as chairperson of the commission, I would like to maybe share with us 2 steps that we want to take to enhance our visibility, our communication with our stakeholders, both in government and also the public. Communication strategy.
The communication strategy starts from what is our mandate. And since we know what our mandate is, we know who we are addressing our communication to. As to whether we have a web page or whatever, those are details that one can work out. But as you very rightly say, we must tell a story. What is JSC doing? For example, you have done so much in employment of judicial officers. I can't remember what numbers they were in 2011 and what numbers are today. I think for judges, today they are in excess of 150. For magistrates, there are so many. That story is not told. And yet it is the achievement of JSC. You have done wonderfully well in even disciplinary cases. Again, that story is not told. These are things that JSC, again, must bring sunshine, because you don't want to be seen as a moribund institution that doesn't do anything, when the truth is you have done so much.
All right. Let's talk about ethics. And I read a lot from what you have written up and other issues and the way you are described by your referees. And I want you to focus on what we call personal conduct for individuals and a kasha, a corporate kasha, the kind of kasha that you like to see the judiciary have, corporate kasha. Would you be able to share with us? Corporate kasha, values.
The corporate culture I would wish to have to see in judiciary is, number one, sensitivity.
Sensitivity.
Let me explain to you why I picked that as number one. Being a Kenyan, I think I was horrified when I read the story of a gentleman called, I think, Murage or something like that, who had smuggled his little infant from Kenyatta National Hospital in a paper bag.
Yes.
And what we did as judiciary is open a file for him and give him a suspended sentence of 3 years.
Okay.
That is not what I would want to see in judiciary. We must be sensitive, because that gentleman, all he required is intervention, not even at our level, but at a public national referral hospital.
Okay.
So sensitivity is very important.
2,
Number 2, it is accountability.
accountability kasha. Yes.
We must be fully accountable.
Accountable.
We should get out of that era of giving judgments which are incomprehensible, giving ex parte orders that persist forever, where we now see that we are responsible and accountable. Whatever we do is for the betterment of the common good.
Okay. Just before I finish, you are at liberty to answer this question. We have crimes or offenses that are across the borders, or international crimes, that if you commit this offense in this country, or other countries that we know we have agreements can actually get hold of you. We had some cases, I think 2 or 3 years ago, some cases that have been going in here, wildlife offenses, drugs, if you can call it. The drugs in our courts for, 10 years and the rest. And when those people appear in those other areas, within 3 months, or less than 3 months, those cases are concluded and finished. I know you talked about delayed judgments and the rest. I want to be very clear. What one thing do you do to ensure that internationally we are seen to expedite our delivery in terms of the cases that come to us that affect even other nations?
Even the crimes that don't affect other nations, even the crimes that just affect us. For example, public looting of funds. Those just affect us to a large extent. In all those cases, the penicillin for it is this: quick disposal of the cases. But when the cases are held at the are not to be resolved in the near future, then you see somebody is delaying and doing all manner of things, and that is I know the case you have in mind. You go to a different jurisdiction and you know that you have a hearing next month, just like Floyd, the case I think Commissioner Macharia was talking about, and you know that your lawyer is not going to say that he had a headache the day before, because for the simple reason the hearing will go on.
Okay.
So that is the whole idea. And when Costa Rica did this study, and it was an empirical study, they actually found a complete relationship between quick hearing of criminal cases and reduction of criminal activity.
Finally, Madam Chair, this is my final question. When you answer the question from the Honorable Attorney General on corruption, I really appreciate that. I wanted to hear from you, both the internal and external, perception or otherwise. Do you believe that there are some cartels that you need to clear from courts that are actually hindering service delivery, justice?
It is possible. At the same time, it may not be correct. So, what I can promise this commission is this: I hold nobody's brief. I'm my own man. I'll come and do what I've been known to do. What I am, Commissioner Gishohi, is hard work.
Hard work.
It's just hard work. Okay. And I'll come, if there are cartels, let them know as soon as I'm sworn in, their days are numbered.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Gishohi. Thank you, Senior Counsel. Senior Counsel, when you asked the question about the source of funding, I heard you talk about exchequer. Would you try to get money from other sources? Ideally, Prof, a judiciary ought to be funded by the government. Ideally, we should be a bit hesitant with external donors. But when need arises and we need external donors, I'll be the first one to seek their assistance. I must also say, in whatever activities that I'll be thinking of, I'll of course also want to work with civil society. There are some civil society groups that are of wonderful influence, who have wonderful literature, and it will be best we work with them. We are foreign donors, yes, but ideally, let's look at Wanjiku to be the person to fund us, because we are here for her. Thank you, Senior Counsel. Next is Honorable Commissioner Koskei.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Senior Counsel.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up from where Commissioner Gishohi left, but I want us to look back, 10 years back. And the happenings that took place. Are there happenings that you can identify, 2, 3, 4, that will inform your administration in judiciary? Besides COVID, of course, is one, the pandemic is one of the happenings that may inform your administration, may shape and inform your administration. What other happenings can you recall that can really mainstream and shape the administration of Chief Justice Ngatia? One is independence. Without independence, there is not much success you can have. I would want to be a Chief Justice that anybody in Kenya is very comfortable
going to his court. Because in that court, they know that the justice of the case will be looked into. I would hate to be a chief justice where any segment of people are uncomfortable with my court.
Senior counsel, I want us to have practical examples of what has happened in the last 10 years that will inform.
One of the practical
Yes.
things I thought is lack of independence, because that was...
Is there any situation, is there anything that you saw that happened that you seem to believe that it was because of lack of independence?
Yes, as you recall, in 2008, a candidate refused to come to our court and opted to go to the streets.
Okay, so that is one.
Yes.
Next. What
Then-
other? Yes.
The next thing is that I would want, or I would look for judges who have fidelity to their oath of office. Fidelity meaning that really it is the case and the case only that will guide their decision.
Yes.
I would want to have a the finances of judiciary ring-fenced.
Yes.
And the beauty with having judiciary funds ring-fenced is we don't need to be going to treasury every now and then, because by doing that we'll never be able to achieve our objectives. So if we could have our revenue ring-fenced, then we are able to budget for it, to plan for it. That way we are going to achieve our year's planning and whatever we intended to do. And I'm sure in this, Commissioner, you would agree with me, there's no point of us getting budgetary allocation a month before the end of the financial year. We would want to have this right at the word go, and that is what the Constitution expects.
Yes.
Yeah, and those things, particularly the last one, it's not just the last 10 years, they are still happening to date.
Any other?
I think those would be the ones at the top of my mind.
Okay, thank you. You've said that you've been a consumer of judiciary services, and you've practiced across from magistracy courts, high courts, up to Supreme Court, and you must have. You must be one of those who have experiences, who can tell how judiciary operates. And I wanted us to focus on customer service. The public more often complain that judiciary is not good in terms of customer service. Long turnaround time on payment of fines, refunds of bails, and several other services that would ordinarily be, instant. But when it comes to judiciary, they say it becomes very complicated, even to have a customer service desk to direct people is a big problem. So, as a consumer of services of these institutions that you are now planning to come and head, what challenges have you faced as a consumer of services, and what probable solutions are you bringing in to sort out those challenges that you are facing as a consumer yourself?
Yes, Commissioner, you've hit the nail on the head. Some years ago, and we can talk about this openly, you'll be given a bail of so much amount of money, but I think it will be so deliberate that since the file is still with the magistrate, you can't pay the bail. And ultimately, you end up being in remand, not because your relatives didn't have the bail money, but because of inbuilt, insensitive processes within the court. That has largely become a thing of the past. Not that we still have room to improve. Look at the fines or the refund of the same bail. You are acquitted of the offense, Your 500,000 has been with judiciary for the last 20 months or whatever. To get it is another laborious exercise. In my view, it should be as simple as a cash or at a bank account. You have the acquittal, is in the court file, you have your original receipt, you have your ID, you should be able to get it instantaneously. Why are we still operating a very archaic process of making somebody go to the cash office for countless number of days? These are things that we should work with very, very quickly and see what processes and what interventions we require to do. And really, it's a question of, we go back to sensitivity, to sensitize our own people. A desk at the entrance of the court, and I see this happening in a few courts, a customer care desk, and just telling people, your court number 1 is this side, court number 2 is this side. It may appear very small, but Commissioner, let me assure you, it's the biggest thing that would happen. I'm sure you have traveled overseas. To be met at the airport makes all the difference. The consumer, our Wanjiko, is coming to Kibera Court for the first time. She has no idea where court number 6 is. If we have an attendant to just tell her, Wanjiko, you go to first floor, turn to the left, that is court number 6. That cost nothing, and that really is a wonderful face of the judiciary.
Thank you. Now, judiciary has been blamed and has been blamed that it is a threat to economic growth. Even last week on Friday, there was an article on one of the newspapers by Nganga Mbogwa, who, I quote, Kenya will perform poorly unless JSC picks a person who thinks business, even as he or she ensures the wheel of justice continues to grind. And judiciary seems to require now a head who will come and think business, who will work closely with the executive in terms of ease of doing business, who will work closely still with legislature to ensure that this country becomes attractive to investors, and thereby, creating, jobs for our youth, at the same time creating wealth. What is it that you are bringing into judiciary that can really help in transforming our way of doing things to the extent that it will be a destination of choice when it comes to investment?
Apart from investment, let's look at the broader picture of economic growth, because I'll also deal with investment in a minute. It is true, because of the way judiciary has been doing its business, and doing its business is a case is filed, it is processed. We never take the effort to look at how much we are locking up in that file. Look at it without again mentioning names. If you are to look at the estates locked up in controversy for the last 30 years, estates of deceased persons locked up in controversy for the last 30 years, is billions and billions and billions of shillings. It takes very little effort to see how you can unlock that wealth. That's number one. Equally, in commercial disputes, and I'm here, I would wish to say the commercial division of the High Court has done so well. They're trying to unlock the cases which are locking up lots and lots of money that would otherwise be freely in the circulation.
Yeah.
Commercial destination, yes. We can be a commercial destination, but we must also do what we are supposed to do. We must make our law productive and an incentive to dispute resolution. The minute we keep on a flip-flop, whether arbitration is final or not final, will never be a good investment destination. Any investor wants to look at a country that, you know, if I have a dispute, I go to arbitration, because in arbitration the beauty with it is it's a commercial decision being made. You don't want to be remembered for posterity about a very refined legal argument. So Kenya must make a very deliberate effort. Are we going to have arbitration as insulated from judicial intervention? And if we do that, then we can go to the next level, have an arbitration center. I'm sure the Honorable Attorney General is very busy on trying to create an arbitration center. But that center will not attract business until the other level, the other tier of is arbitration final concluded. And if we do that, you find actually foreign investment is coming quite easily. And even for us as local people, you unlock a lot of wealth, which is now locked up in unnecessary court cases.
So what solutions are you going to give? Can you break it down and
Yes,
go direct to...
I'll break it down.
Yes.
For family division, all the people who have had their estates locked up before the lawyers who are now acting for them before they were born, I'll allocate 1 or 2 or 3 judges to hear those cases to conclusion, because that is so important. We cannot allow that we are now going to the 4th or 5th decade after the departure of the testator, and those cases are still locked up in controversy. I'll do everything I can to resolve this issue of arbitration, because once we resolve it, then the executive will be able to set up an arbitration center, and that will be an attractive investment to foreign investors to come and invest in this country. A lot of it rotates around what we want to do. And all the time, unfortunately, Commissioner, we go back to Singapore. They had all these things that they could do. Why did they do them right? They did them right because they took a bold step and said, on this is the way to go, and they went for it, and now even disputes are being taken to Singapore.
Thank you. My final question is on community service. I've seen that you're really busy. You involved yourself more and more on community service, right from home to Nairobi. You are even supporting a hospital and chairing even the Alamano Center construction. What drives you? What motivates you in focusing more on community service? Is it because you are running away from conspicuous consumption, or what is it that is driving you towards that direction?
I'm not running away from anything, Commissioner Waziri, at all. What you see is really the same person from January to December. It is not a hospital, it's the hospice.
Oh, yeah.
Hospice is a center for palliative care for the terminally ill. I support them wholeheartedly. I'm very, very close to them. I work programs with them. You'd be surprised, Waziri, for 50,000 shillings, that would be enough palliative medicine for 1 or 2 patients for the next 2 to 3 months. I look at it because I share in the divinity of every human being. We are all one people. And it's very easy to forget our brothers and sisters in the hour of need. When we do that, we lose ourselves. We are united as a people. We are united in times of distress. So I do a lot of work for them. I am a practicing Catholic. Currently, I'm the chairman of Ngatia Teacher Training College. I was requested by the Archdiocese or the Archbishop to do that work. I am doing it because a request from my Archbishop is really a mark of trust. I'm currently renovating our chapel. We are about to get the diploma teacher trainees, maybe in 2 months' time. I decided to renovate the chapel, and I do so many other activities at home. I'm the patron of my parish in Nyeri, and I do so many other activities. Am I running away from anything? Far from it. I do believe that we have a common destiny and a common humanity.
Thank you, Senior Counsel. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senior Counsel. You talked of Nyeri. Is that your home county? Because I should have asked that from the beginning.
Yes, you didn't ask.
Yes,
could I take this opportunity?
Yes.
I was born in Nanyuki. I went to primary school in Nanyuki. I saw Ole Kapalo, who was a big boy at Nanyuki Secondary School. I was so impressed by his skills. I then applied to join Nanyuki Secondary School because of Ole Kapalo. He was more or less a mentor to me. It's after that I went to Nyeri High School. And may I also say this, because some of these things need to be said. A lot of boys in Nanyuki Secondary School, as Professor, I'm sure you may be aware, the catchment area is like Kipi, a bit of Nyeri and Aberdare. These are the areas that had been ravaged during the independence struggle, ravaged to the bone. So a lot of the parents did not have the means, but we had a very good bursary scheme founded by the first president, and most of us, including myself, our teacher or the person who paid for us is the bursary scheme. You went to the district education office. If you had good grades and you had been appointed to a government school or you had been admitted to a government school, there will be a bursary. But as you remember, maybe you may not remember, Prof, school fees was something like 450 for the boarding school and 250 for the day scholars like me. So with a bursary of 200 shillings from the district education office, we were able to go through our education. So I am forever grateful to a safety net that was created by the first president, because that is the one that enabled a lot of boys in Nanyuki Secondary School to see the end of secondary school. As we were going to A-level, school fees for A-level was abolished, again by the first president, so we were able to do A-level without any tuition. University of Nairobi, there was a scheme which was the boom, which we used to get every term, and for which I have repaid to the full cent. So to a large extent, good procedures in government are able to see even those who are not endowed go to the highest level in life. So for any young people who are listening to this, it is possible with hard work, with perseverance, to aim for the very best. Kapalo and I are united in saying it is because of those timely interventions that we became what we are today.
Thank you, Senior Counsel, for that additional information, so we can record your county as, is it Nanyuki or Nyeri?
I'm born in Nanyuki, that's my county of birth, but my ancestral home is in Nyeri. So I'm owned by two counties which are next to each other. So I cannot denounce my ancestry. I do a lot of work in Nyeri because that is where my ancestral home is.
Which county is in your ID council?
Laikipia. Laikipia.
Also, I don't know what to record. Is it Laikipia then?
I think we go by the home place I was born is Laikipia.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And your name betrays you, so we record your Kikuyu by ethnicity.
Yes, I am. Also, I should be more of a Kenyan, but I'm a Kikuyu by that tribe.
Yeah, we asked this question, Senior Council, because of the requirement of taking care of diversity. I'm sure you're aware.
Correct.
Thank you. Yeah. Lastly, now is the turn of Honorable Commissioner Evelyn Orwade to ask you the last set of questions. Commissioner Orwade.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, Senior Counsel.
Good afternoon, Madam Commissioner.
I have a few follow-up questions before I ask the questions that I had for you. I'll start off with, Columbus is said to have discovered America, even while the Red Indians were in it.
Yeah.
In the insider-outsider debate, you've described yourself as an insider and not an outsider. And I think you're entitled to your opinion. But you set yourself apart, if I understood you correctly, when you drew the analogy of the Chief Justice who put an end to racial discrimination. Essentially, your message or your point is that you bring in a fresh perspective. Now, I've been listening to you, Senior Counsel. You have quite well put the ailments that belabor or beleaguer this institution. But your interventions, most of what you have said, is what is already happening in the institution. You've spoken about accountability of individual judicial officers. We already have the daily court returns that we file on a daily basis to account for the work you've done on a given day. You spoke about a cashless system, which is already up and running. You spoke about identifying some judges to concentrate on backlog. We already have that in the form of service weeks. You've spoken about automation. We're already rolling that out. You've spoken about inculcating ethics and values. We are forever attending trainings, are forever going on retreats, basically doing just that. On motivation, you spoke about a medical scheme. We already have that. So what I'm wondering is this. What is the fresh perspective, the innovative strategy, the practical thing that you bring on board as Chief Justice Ngatia?
Number one, I think, Commissioner, I didn't describe myself as an insider. I said I am a user or a consumer of the services.
I stand corrected.
Thank you. Not that it's wrong to be an insider, but I never got the opportunity at the right time. Mm-hmm. Alternatively, I was not available at that time. In my first 100 days, I will have the equivalent of JT, Judicial Transformation Framework that Chief Justice Mutunga did. I have already identified what I'll call it. I'll call it expeditious disposal of cases. In that blueprint or in that transformation agenda, I'll be able to come up with pillars of what, with your assistance, we hope to be able to be transformative. True enough, there is access to justice. True enough, I concede that. But access to justice has two elements, qualitative and quantitative. Access to justice has also certain drawbacks. You may build a court, which we already have done in Nyeri. Are we content to say there is access to justice because of that court? I'm looking at the next development, which is an expedited delivery of the court cases in that court. So I would go on record as saying this. Very nice framework policies are in place. Fantastic. But we need now to refine them and to see out of those framework which are the areas we can take to the next level. In those framework, expeditious disposal of cases is not given the prominence I would wish to give it. I would wish actually to come up with a timetable of from filing to conclusion, what period of time are we talking about? I know about backlog, it's there, we are doing everything possible, but we can do much more on that backlog. We can reduce the cases in the courts, magistrates' courts, by having small claims courts. And those small claims courts may take a huge bulk of the backlog of those cases. So it is not something I would have done, a transformation agenda I would have done as a practitioner, because I would not be able to have access to the full range of the literature which you have and which I don't have. But I can say that I'll be able to work on that, and with the effort with the participation of all the other players, be able to roll it out within 100 days. I think that's what Chief Justice Mutunga did, Chief Justice Maraga did, and that is what I'll be able to do.
And Chief Justice Maraga also gave a time frame within which he had hoped we should be able to deal with backlog of a certain number of years.
Correct.
Yes, so I take it that what you're bringing on board is basically to refine what we already have in place, the strategies we already have in place.
And to improve on it. Not just to refine, but to improve on it and to bring maybe another dimension or another angle of resolving it.
Okay, thank you. I think another thing I want to say on the issue of backlog, not necessarily as a question, but just to set the record straight over something you had mentioned earlier about dismissal of dormant cases.
Yeah.
You mentioned something to the effect that it's like running away from the problem. I just feel the need to correct the impression created, because it is true that on many occasions, Kenyans will rush to court with their cases. Somewhere down the road, maybe because of intervening circumstances, they choose to abandon those cases.
Yes.
So I think it's a very useful strategy to do away with dead cases in our registries, just to set the record straight.
Could I please?
You wish to comment on that?
Yes.
Okay, feel free.
And here I'll start guided by my Lord Judge Majanja. I think a lot of cases, particularly in commercial, are won or lost on applications. So I would agree with you. If somebody goes to court, commercial division, does not get the injunction to stop a bank from realizing the property, and the property is realized, the chances of that person going back to court are almost zero. So you are quite right. It's the procedure in which we invoke to get those dismissals. If we do dismissals summarily, then what they do is they provoke applications for reinstatement. I am in agreement with dismissals, but we must be with due process. And sometimes I think in a service week, there's a service week, I remember I did a bit of looking at, not really research, but from that service week there were so many dismissals, and the following week there were so many applications for reinstatement. So it's a question of how we do it, and we do it correctly. But at the end of it all, much as we do dismissals, there are still those cases that we must handle.
Okay, I've had you on that point. Before I ask you the next question, Senior Counsel, I would wish to ask you, how many associates do you have in your law firm?
Currently, because of what we are going through, I have 3 other lawyers.
3 lawyers.
We upscale as depending on the type of engagements we are involved in. I have led teams of up to 30 and 40 lawyers. I upscale depending on the activities. Currently, I have 3 other lawyers, so we are 4 lawyers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Senior Counsel, in my view, you put it quite aptly when you said that the most critical of the Chief Justice's role is to be the head of the judiciary. And you must agree with me that the dynamics in leading a team of, say, 10, 20, 50 lawyers is different from the dynamics of leading an institution, an arm of government that has over 5,000 judicial staff, slightly over 500 judicial officers, and about 200 judges. In your experience, or what you have experienced in your legal life, do you think you are well equipped to handle that kind of responsibility?
Yes, Madam Commissioner, as I indicated, the tools you use to manage Safaricom with so many millions of subscribers are the same tools you'll use to manage another company with a fraction of those subscribers. Consequently, we cannot set as a must-have done somebody who has managed, say, 10,000 people to be the only potential CJ. All over the world, Kenya included, we've had CJs who have not had any leadership of an institution. The most pronounced Chief Justice, Professor, is in prior 2010, is Justice Madan. Any Kenyan would remember Justice Madan. Judge Madan was just a judge. Never ever did any administrative work. He became the most pronounced and the most remembered judge in the history of Kenya. Closely followed by somebody like Justice Apalu. Justice Apalu was just a judge and he was appointed a Chief Justice. Had not even run a registry of 2 people or 3 people. Those 2 justices served for a period of 2 to 3 years. They left a mark that is everlasting in this country. I do not think, in my humble opinion, that a person who has had an administrative or task force of so many people will make a better Chief Justice than one who has not. And you can check this across the world. But we don't even need to go further. Kenya in itself is a wonderful example. And starting off from the first Chief Justices, and I'm sure here Commissioner Attorney General has a better history than I have of the Chief Justices who are well remembered and who had not ever held any administrative task in this judiciary.
Thank you for your response. Now moving on to the questions that I had. What is the position of a prospective parent in a surrogacy agreement when it comes to rights, parental rights and responsibilities?
Please say that again.
The position of a prospective parent in a surrogacy agreement in respect to the rights, parental rights and responsibilities.
Surrogacy is one of those very decisive topics. I've dealt with it slightly in my dissertation. The difficulty, Commissioner, as you're fully aware, is what rights do you have? All you did was to say enter into a commercial agreement with a young lady that she will carry the kid for you. This young lady midstream decides no, she's not going to give up her child. She's the biological mother. And those surrogacy arrangements, and at the appropriate time I think I'll write a paper or 2, are very decisive topics. In America, this has been the subject of raging controversy which has gone up to the Supreme Court. Because you who gave the mother the money, you feel entitled as of right. But on the other hand, the biological mother feels, and she's perfectly entitled to feel, that this is the womb, the child of her flesh. So what rights are they? that is something that really one cannot be able to define with any accuracy, because for one answer, you get two different answers.
Senior Counsel, our courts have made some determinations around that subject, despite the fact that we do not have a formal legal framework to deal with those agreements.
Correct.
And I would just love to hear from you how, according to the decisions that have emanated from our courts, how, for instance, a prospective parent should go about acquiring the rights and responsibilities of a parent. For instance, how he should go about getting his name registered as a parent, which of course comes along with the rights and responsibilities of a parent.
Why I indicated that for one answer you get two contra answers, I'm aware of the case. Maybe there are more cases than one. I've been requested to give an opinion for purposes of going to the Court of Appeal. So I'll be a bit hesitant to go into it, but definitely what we can say, and here I think Commissioner you would agree, that is not the last word. That decision has not been tested at appellate level, and because of the constitutional underpinning of it, in case I were to go on with that brief, I see myself ending at the Supreme Court. So I'll be a bit hesitant to talk about it, but it is really not a last word on that issue.
Very well, Counsel. We can move on to the next question that I have.
Yes.
What are the Bangalore principles of judicial conduct?
The Bangalore principles, I do remember them. They are 6 in number. And these are for the judges and also for the judiciary. In the sense that judiciary is supposed to craft a code of conduct around those principles. Independence is one of them. I think the next one is impartiality. That is natural. Equality. The fourth would be propriety, how the judge holds himself, because how the judge holds himself in public and in private is so important. Then the next one is integrity, and then competence. And to me, if I could pause there, Commissioner, competence becomes so important, because to have a judicial officer who is incompetent is to put an aircraft in the hands of an unqualified person. And then the last one, I believe, is diligence. Diligence, and judiciary, and for that matter, JSC would be able to craft a code of conduct around those principles, as I understood the paper that I read.
Thank you. You've actually moved on to answer my next question. I was about to ask you what is the legal status of the Bangalore principles.
Yes.
Maybe you can say something about that.
Yes, the legal status is that really this is something that has been agreed upon, and they are repeated all over, and judiciaries or JSCs are supposed to craft their code of conduct around them.
Thank you. Now that you say you did some reading around this, where and when was the idea of having the principles first conceived?
I think it's got a long history. There was a Harare Convention. Before then, there was a meeting, I think, in the United Kingdom. There appear to have been quite a number of meetings discussing this. I may not put my finger directly to the first one, but I could see there's a lot of engagement. And maybe even after Bangalore, there could be subsequent engagements.
Okay, thank you. This is a question that I have got from your introduction. You talked about being involved in some kind of framework, developing some kind of framework of the disciplinary process at the University of Nairobi when you started off. And I just wanted to ask you, because I imagine in your brief at that time, you may have encountered something to do with the subject of student activism or youth activism. What is your position concerning that?
Activism at that level is naturally expected. Youth activism is a phenomena that any university must expect. I also did a bit of work for our Catholic university. At that time we had clergy who were in charge, and I had really to take the clergy through a process to tell the clergy, look, please remember the students are secular. They are not part of us. They are not part of the clergy. So it is something that we must expect. We can't expect anything less than youth at that level having some activism. What I find difficult to understand is how we as a university then react to that by being very insensitive and having disharmony in how we react to it. So a student found, for example, having done ABC, is expelled by one college, but for the same offense, he is reprimanded. You see, the minute, even for us as lawyers, we see disparity in the sanctions we get, you naturally getting counter feelings that no, so and so was favored because his father is rich. So activism, true enough, it was there. And I'm sure even during our times at the university, there was a lot of activism.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Senior Counsel. Now, my next question touches on matters that border on welfare and employee motivation. I'm sure you did quite a bit of preparation when you made up your mind to apply for this position, and even as you were coming for the interview. And in that preparation, I expect you may have interacted with some of the welfare concerns that the members of the judiciary have. Am I correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Now, we have a scenario that is causing a lot of concern, especially amongst the judicial officers. We know that under the Constitution, in terms of post-admission experience, the required experience is 10 years. By the time a member joins the judiciary as a judicial officer, as an RM, resident magistrate, they are required to have about 3 years experience. If he's lucky enough to get promoted at the next interview, but if he is lucky, comes after 3 years, he would be having 6 years experience. By the time he's PM, if he's extremely lucky, he will have close to 10 years experience. When jobs for interview, or rather when jobs for promotion or appointment to the superior courts are advertised, of course the cutoff required experience is 10 years, just as is provided in the Constitution. But you will find this magistrate is still far below the hierarchy of ranks that is required to go through before he can ascend to the High Court. Invariably, members who should be promoted to the High Court will be picked from the Chief Magistrate level. So that by the time you even qualify for consideration, you will have pumped in no less than 18 years in this institution. Yet out there, shortlisting is done based on 10 years post-admission experience. This eventually also brings in another problem when it comes to the pay structure. Because after putting about 18 years in this institution, your level of pay may not necessarily be at the entry level for judges. But you'll have this fellow, maybe from private practice, after having 10 or 11 years experience out there, coming in and objecting to your higher pay. Those are issues we've been grappling with in the institution. So there is that concern that the application of the cutoff post-admission experience is applied discriminatorily. But then again, we have those challenges. Are we going to open it up for RMs to compete with chief magistrates for promotion to the superior courts? How are we going to address that challenge under your leadership? What creative interventions would you come up with that will satisfactorily settle this issue in a way that will be acceptable to all people on both divides?
Again, it's unfortunate this discussion goes insider and outsider. It's so unfortunate because if my view is allowed, I will still go back to the word of merit. I would hate to ever hear a magistrate saying, if lucky enough, I was promoted. I would actually be doubly hurt to hear the phrase, if I'm extremely lucky, then I'm promoted. My promotion policy would be based on nothing but merit. Merit would be the only consideration, not luck. Consequently, it's important really that a peer review is in place so that a magistrate at court this and a magistrate at court that, this other one, you are able to independently verify how hardworking and meritorious are their output.
I'm sorry, Council, if my words sort of created a confusion. When I was talking about luck, I wasn't talking about people getting promoted on the basis of luck.
Okay.
I'm talking about luck in terms of coming up for determination for promotion.
Very well.
Yes.
Thank you. So, because it's merit-based, I would want to see a situation where when a magistrate has done 10 years or 11 years or whatever number of years, that magistrate has an equal opportunity with somebody in private practice to apply for a job, for appointment as a High Court judge. I would not want to hear or to wait until a magistrate is at the level of the chief magistrate to be able to say it's only at that level that you can apply. Because the Constitution defines it's 10 years, isn't it? So why is it we are putting other barriers? Because these barriers become a hindrance only to a segment of the population. For a lawyer, there is no hindrance that you must have done cases up to this level to apply to the High Court. It is the number of years. So, because of this belief I have in uniformity and non-discrimination, I can assure you, Commissioner, in my tenure, a magistrate who has the required constitutional qualification, given the work done, would have an equal opportunity with any other person. As a matter of fact, I'll look more towards magistrates going to the High Court because it's also part of developing a culture of this a reward culture.
Thank you very much, Council. I'm sure magistrates listening to you out there are crossing their fingers for you, wishing you luck.
Thank you. Not that I would discriminate against advocates in private practice, but it's important that we do not discriminate against magistrates and then give a leverage to advocates in private practice. We must look at the merit and merit only for these judicial appointments.
Thank you. So now we can move on to your application.
Yes.
I noticed from the documents that, or rather the response we got from the vetting bodies, that you are not cleared by KRA, you are found to be not compliant. I just want to hear from you whether that, whatever issue that was there has been resolved, and if you can get communication to that effect that you have now been cleared.
I think, Commissioners, it's important I say this. Let this process also not have many other actors. I have a valid clearance certificate. Then I got communication from KRA that all candidates for this position must go there. I wondered, despite our having clearance certificates, When my tax consultant went, he was told I have some penalties of 1 million shillings. I paid it, but I started seeing as if there is a third hand in this process. A week later, I was told, doing in-depth from 2015, there are some tax arrears. I have responded to it, and I have told Caesar that Caesar, you are entitled to your lawful sums, but nothing more beyond your lawful sum. We have agreed to do an ADR under the Act, and I have every intention to pay whatever is due. But I hesitate to say this. Do not let this process also have any other player. I was quite alarmed about being told to go there despite having a valid clearance certificate. But to answer your directly, yes, we are at ADR, and I've made every provision to pay whatever may be outstanding. For advocates in private practice, we have certain distinct disadvantages. You are holding funds for a client for purchase of a property. The client tells you put that money in a fixed deposit account. Once money is in a fixed deposit account, after 3 months, the interest is generated. And from that interest, there is a withholding tax. That withholding tax is paid directly to KRA. For KRA to assume that the money on interest is your income, and therefore expect me to pay income tax and VAT, you tell them no.